Okay, everybody, it's me, Gregory Mannarino. It is Friday. We made it. Almost. Anyway, let's talk here. So, like I said, Friday, November 12th, 2021. Are you listening, maybe, to some of the mainstream channels this morning? It's interesting. This is what they do. When you turn on, let's say, Bloomberg, Fox, any of the mainstream channels, they always talk about the same thing. So they got the same script pretty much. So this morning, it's all about bubble talk, about is the stock market in a bubble? Again, here you and I stand, and it's just disbelief. Really? Is it possible, maybe, that the stock market is in a bubble? Actually, it's a hyper bubble, and you all know that. And I want to talk more about this just real quick. Yes, absolutely. This stock market is a hyper bubble, and you all know that. It's been this way for a very, very long time. Now, I don't want any of you to have some kind of misunderstanding here. When an asset, let's just talk about, well, the overall market, is overvalued, and to say the least, and I've talked about this for years and years. The stock market is so overvalued by every single metric that anyone with a functioning brain wants to look at. It's astonishing. It really is. But what does it mean when an asset or an entire market is overvalued, but by any measure? Well, it certainly does not mean, and I want you to understand what I'm about to tell you, that it's about to, all of a sudden reverse and go lower. When any asset is overvalued or overowned, generally it follows that path for a long time. Again, look, you and me, if there's one thing that we need to know, and we need to know it now, is you cannot possibly be in the business of picking tops and or bottoms. Anyone who does that is going to lose in the long run. I mean, of course, you can get lucky, but no, it's a near impossibility, literally, to say, okay, you know what, this asset or a whole market is so overvalued, well, it's going to drop today, tomorrow, next week. Absolutely not. So when an asset or an entire market is overvalued or even in a bubble, that does not mean at all that that bubble or the trajectory for that asset is going to turn any time soon. Same thing with looking at it from another perspective. If something is undervalued, let's say you have an asset that's massively undervalued, like for example, physical gold, physical silver, and I believe cryptocurrencies are massively undervalued right now, doesn't mean that all of a sudden they're going to vault higher tomorrow. Absolutely not. They follow that pathway until something acts against it. And when you have a situation like we have now, things are going to stay distorted. I mean, look, nobody knows this better than you. Nobody. That we are in the most twisted, distorted environment in the history of the world with massive asset bubbles to the upside and to the downside. There are such things as inverse bubbles. And I believe gold, silver, even platinum, palladium, and cryptos, believe it or not, are in inverse bubbles right now based on the debt issue that we have. And it's, look, you want to look at the debt market or debt at face value. Well, good for you. You don't know what you're looking at. Let me just say that straight out. When you look at an asset's face value, especially when you're talking about debt, okay, you have to understand that there are layers and layers and layers and layers of derivatives underneath it. So, that's why no one can possibly understand or figure out, honestly, how big, and it's a monster, the debt bubble actually is. And it's the debt bubble that people should be worried about, not any kind of a stock market bubble, because the debt bubble is the driving force behind this. And who's fueling it? Well, it's the Fed. You all know that. It's central banks around the world who are flooding the world with debt because that's their end game, to buy it all, to own everything. So anyway, just with that said, so you watch Fox Business, Bloomberg, CNBC, and they parade out the same people talking about the same stories. Yes, absolutely. It's about time that these imbecile people understand that this market is, it's not just a bubble. It's a hyper bubble like we've never seen before, and it's by design because look, this is all going to lead up to a climax. I used that exact word recently. When all of this just rolls over, and it's just a wealth transfer effect. You see, right now, the middle class is being robbed blind, and they have been getting robbed blind since QE1. It just hasn't stopped since that time. Suppressed rates have devastated anybody with an interest earning account, even a high yield account. We're not even close to keeping up with the actual rate of inflation. It's grand theft on an unimaginable scale, only to push that cash into the stock market. Sure, people who have 401k plans and stuff, they're feeling real good. They're looking at their accounts and they're just smiling from ear to ear, but they're not smart enough to get out in time. Again, look, the professional investors, traders, people like myself, people like you, most of you, I'd be willing to bet at least, if you follow this blog, you understand the market. And we're going to know when to get out of here. We're going to be one of the first people out of this market, okay? When people start running for the door all at the same time, not everyone gets out. You understand? So what do people do when they're trying to sell, let's say, a stock? They mark it down, they mark it down, they mark it down, they mark it down. And that starts a cascade of events where the market really craters very rapidly. And, people who don't know what they're doing, the average investor, people that are stuck, let's say, in a 401k plan, and they have to rely on someone else to move their money, well, they're in a lot of trouble. That's 99% of the people are invested in 1k or something like it. And so it's the same story, and it's set up in that way for a reason. It's the first that know how to short this market to take advantage of this when it all rolls over. The investment banks, the hedge funds, that's what they're going to do. And that, all of that accumulated paper wealth, well, you got nothing, like I always say. You look at your 401k or your investment plan, it's all digits on a screen. You have zero until it's realized, okay? Like I said, it gives people a false sense of security, only to watch it all just evaporate at one particular time. And that's again by design here. All of it is. Nothing happens by accident, people. There are no coincidences. Anyway, with that said, let's move forward here. Stock futures are higher right now. Gold and silver under a little pressure. Cryptocurrencies under a little pressure. Crude oil is under a little pressure right now. Let me say this too. This market really, really, really could use a pullback here. Look at what it's done. Record high, record high, record high, record high. Tiny little pullback, couple of 100 points. We haven't had a meaningful drop or a meaningful pullback in quite a long time. And the market, look, the trajectory is higher. Easy money is not going to stop. Inflation is going to surge much higher than what we're seeing right now, all by design again. And that's the other thing, yesterday that was laughable. You got the mainstream media, oh, the Fed, they made a mistake. How about no, the Fed is doing it. No, everything the Fed does is so well thought out. They are so far ahead of everybody else. Again, they have think tanks there and they have this all, laid out for decades to come. They're not flying by the seat of their pants. They never do. And everything that they do is no accidents. You understand? And they just drag the people along with them. So this is why it's so important to keep your eyes open, to realize what's going on. Look at the macro picture. Understand what's underlying it all, what the end game is, what the goal of central banks is. All right, and they fulfilled it, really. All they needed to do was find a mechanism to shut down the global economy, and they certainly found one. I think most of us realize the truth behind this whole thing. I'm not going to talk about it because they probably won't even put up this video. Anyway, shut down the global economy, and that gave them an open door. Their clear pathway that they've been hoping for, well, that they've actually engineered to happen at this exact time, so they can become the lender and buyer of last resort. People, what's really going on is so sinister underneath everything that it's actually, if you understand this, well, you should be somewhat afraid. But what are we doing? If we understand their game, well, at least we can make it work for us, or at least attempt to do so. And that's exactly what you and I have been doing for years. And when this whole thing rolls over, we're going to have it covered there too. I got your back. This guy will never let you down. And I got you covered. And I think you all know that. All right, people, kind of a long video again for my mornings. I don't like doing them this long, but I had a lot to say. All right, look, share this video. Get it out there. I want to hear from you. You know, I do read the comments. I try to read them. And that's another thing I want you to understand real quick. YouTube is screening virtually every single comment that comes through here. Sometimes comments don't show up for quite a long time. And if YouTube does not like the comments you placed, especially if it's talking negatively against certain things, they'll take them down. Just so you know, you have to put them in code. If you're going to write something like negative, let's say about, I'm just going to say it, about the vaccine or something, you have to write it in some kind of code, because they have some kind of AI out here that screens every single comment. And it's pretty frightening to see that too. You're not allowed to have your own opinion anymore. Again, no free thought. You're not allowed to think for yourself. Free action, forget about it. Free movement, absolutely not. It's all part of a much bigger thing. All right, people, look, love you a lot. I'll see all of you later. And we'll sum it up.